Let's begin with the foundations. Welcome to another lecture. I am Professor Alexei, and with me is Priyanka. Today we examine a singular figure whose career intersects entertainment, advocacy, and American popular culture, Mariska Hargitay. It's important to understand from the outset that we are discussing both an artist and an institution, a person and a platform.
Hi everyone. I'm Priyanka, and I'm excited for this one because it's about how a television role can change real-world behavior and policy, not just ratings. It makes me wonder how one character can carry so much cultural weight for so long.
To frame our discussion, Mariska Hargitay is best known for portraying Olivia Benson on NBC's Law and Order Special Victims Unit since 1999, now the longest-running character in American primetime drama. Beyond acting, she is a producer, director, philanthropist, and founder of Mighty Entertainment and the Joyful Heart Foundation. In technical terms, we observe a multi-hyphenate whose on-screen continuity generated off-screen influence, from syndication profits and creative control to measurable advocacy outcomes, including a news and documentary Emmy as producer of I Am Evidence.
Maybe the best place to begin is by asking a simple question. What is the scope of her impact exactly? Like, is it just fan engagement? Or something structural in media and policy spaces?
In this context, impact spans three domains. First, television, leadership of a procedural that normalized survivor-centered storytelling at primetime scale. Second, philanthropy, Joyful Heart Foundation's programs and public education on sexual assault, domestic violence, and child abuse, with particular emphasis on the rape kit backlog. Third, cultural translation, language, visibility, and iconography, such as Benson's Season 13 pendant referencing Joyful Heart, that embed advocacy into weekly narratives. The result is a durable feedback loop between performance and reform discourse.
Moving on. Why does this matter right now? I think the stakes feel unusually personal here.
The stakes are immediate. In 2024, Hargitay publicly disclosed that she is a rape survivor, reframing her advocacy as deeply personal and urging a no-shame response to survivors. Earlier in 2018, I Am Evidence helped expose the scale of untested rape kits in the United States, accelerating policy conversations. Historically, misunderstandings clustered around her identity. Frequent comparisons to her mother, Jane Mansfield, and later the revelation in 2025 that her biological father is Nelson Sardelli, after growing up with Mickey Hargitay as her legal and formative father. These clarifications matter because biography and advocacy credibility often get conflated in public discourse.
Actually, before we go too deep, I want to ask something simple first. Could we lay down some basic facts in history, like a timeline snapshot?
Let's start with the history. Born January 1964 in Santa Monica to Jane Mansfield. In June 1967, at age 3.5, she survived a car crash that killed her mother, sustaining a zigzag scar on her head while she and her brothers slept in the back. Post-1967, she was raised by Mickey Hargitay and Ellen Ciano. We then see early public exposure. The Merv Griffin Show in 1966 as a child, followed by structured training at UCLA's School of Theater, Film, and Television, participation in Kappa Kappa Gamma, and notably leaving early to pursue acting after winning Miss Beverly Hills USA in 1982. She studied improv at the Groundlings, sharpening agility that later served both sitcoms and drama. Linguistically, she speaks English, French, Hungarian, Spanish, and Italian, an unusual range that broadens global audience connection. Moving forward, the 1980s and 1990s were years of genre diversification. Downtown, Falcon Crest, In the Heat of the Night, and the early country music MTV milestone, She Loves My Car in 1984. She read for Elaine Bennis in Seinfeld's meta two-part The Pilot in 1993. She had a recurring role on ER from 1997 to 1998. There were near misses, such as a briefly filmed turn as Dulcea in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie, that was later cut. Then, spring 1999, the decisive SVU auditions. Finalists for Olivia Benson included Hargitay, Samantha Mathis, and Reiko Aylesworth. For Elliot Stabler, Tim Matheson, John Slattery, and Christopher Maloney. Dick Wolf and NBC's Garth Ancier approved the Hargitay-Maloney pairing, citing palpable chemistry. The rest is industrial history. On SVU, she trained as a rape crisis advocate to prepare for the role, later becoming a certified rape counselor, and in 2004, founding the Joyful Heart Foundation. Accolades include an Emmy and a Golden Globe for acting, and a News and Documentary Emmy as producer of I Am Evidence. The work also involved physical risk, a partially collapsed lung after a 2008 stunt fall, surgery in 2009, and chest pains. In 2021, a broken ankle written into the season 23 premiere. Personally, she married actor Peter Herman in 2004, welcomed a son in 2006, and adopted a daughter and son in 2011. In 2013, she received a Hollywood Walk of Fame star, placed next to her mother's. Crossovers followed with Chicago PD, Chicago Fire, and organized crime. Pop culture cameos range from a Got Milk ad in 2007 to Taylor Swift's Bad Blood in 2015. Financially, by 2025, she rose to become the highest-paid actor on television by a wide margin, earning approximately $750,000 per episode when producing and syndication are included. In 2025, she launched Mighty Entertainment and directed My Mom, Jane. In 2026, she announced a Broadway debut in Every Brilliant Thing. The arc, from on-screen to behind-the-camera leadership, is structurally coherent.
That was helpful to think through, actually. Thank you, Professor.
Speaking of coherence, a brief personal note. In a seminar on mathematical modeling of backlogs, I once used the Rape Kit backlog as a case study to show how funding constraints, testing capacity, and policy prioritization produce queuing effects. Students already knew Olivia Benson but had not seen the documentary I Am Evidence. Connecting the narrative to the queuing theory, we observed, sharpened their attention more effectively than any abstract M over MQ. This brings us to our larger questions. Let's transition to another aspect. 3 big questions. First, a historical question about her career trajectory. Second, a counterfactual about different casting choices in 1999. Third, an open question concerning the future of her advocacy and production work. We proceed sequentially. Big question 1, career trajectory. Early years were marked by contingency, pilots, short-lived series and supporting roles, plus persistent comparisons to Jane Mansfield. Yet we see a rational accumulation of competencies. Improv at the Groundlings, police procedural rhythms in Tequila and Bonetti, ensemble pacing on ER, comedic timing showcased via Seinfeld and sitcoms. The 1999 selection hinged on chemistry with Maloney, but what followed was not mere stability. It was evolution into producing and directing, as well as survivor advocacy that fed back into story authenticity. The causal chain is reinforced by her training as a rape crisis advocate. advocacy-informed performance, which informed public trust, which enabled documentary producing, which produced policy-relevant visibility, financial leverage, evident in reported negotiations and later top-tier earnings, flowed from longevity and executive responsibilities. In simpler terms, persistence plus craft breadth plus mission coherence equals institutional stature.
I'm curious about the specific pre-SVU roles that best prepared her for Olivia Benson. Can we say which ones were most formative and why?
To elaborate, three stand out. First, Tequila and Bonetti in 1992, where she played Officer Angela Garcia. This habituated her to cop show dialogue and procedural cadence. Second, the 1991 Adam 12 episode, Anatomy of a Rape. Thematically proximate to SVU's subject matter, forced an early engagement with sensitive storytelling. Third, ER in 1997-1998, which trained her in ensemble timing under high narrative throughput. SVU's precinct scenes require similar orchestration. Add the groundlings to sustain emotional agility, and the Seinfeld the pilot appearance to demonstrate comedic elasticity. The composite skill set undergirded Benson's empathy and steel. Now, big question two, the counterfactual casting. Chemistry is not a metaphor. It is a measurable interaction term in ensemble performance. In spring 1999, alternate finalists existed for both Benson and Stabler. Had Dick Wolf selected, say, Samantha Mathis or Reiko Aylesworth, and paired them with Tim Matheson or John Slattery, we can infer a different tonal vector, perhaps more ironic, perhaps more cerebral, but potentially less of the grounded empathic intensity that the Hargitay-Maloney pairing delivered. The Benson-Stabler dynamic established the series' equilibrium between outrage and restraint. Absent that, SVU might have achieved competence without longevity, or longevity without the distinctive cultural trust that later enabled advocacy crossovers. Moreover, without Hargitay's specific preparation as a rape crisis advocate, the on-screen survivor ethos may have taken longer to cohere.
Can we maybe now look at outcomes? Like, would the franchise still have become the longest-running primetime drama? Or would it have leveled off sooner without that exact pairing?
Arguably, the Law and Order ecosystem could still have maintained high output, but SVU's specific record, Benson as the longest-running character, likely depended on that chemistry and on Hargitay's subsequent integration into producing and directing. Without those, cross-franchise continuity might persist, yet the advocacy loop, Benson's pendant, I Am Evidence's amplification, Joyful Heart's mainstream visibility, would be attenuated. In short, institutional success may have remained, but the sociocultural signature would have been muted. On to our next point. Big question 3, the future of advocacy. The trajectory includes founding Joyful Heart in 2004, campaigning for VAWA reauthorization in 2012, integrating the pendant on-screen in season 13, co-producing I Am Evidence in 2017 with HBO release in 2018, public survivor disclosure in 2024, and strategic expansion via Mighty Entertainment in 2025, alongside executive producing Nuns versus the Vatican, and being named to the inaugural Time 100 philanthropy list. We observe a maturing portfolio, survivor services and reform messaging, plus broader documentary ambitions. The open question is not whether the advocacy continues, but where the marginal impact is greatest: policy, services, or narrative change.
What comes to mind next is Joyful Heart's future direction. If I may suggest a focus, could technology or data standards for tracking rape kits be a priority? And also, how does Mighty Entertainment fit into that picture?
Clearly, improving data standards and transparency for the rape kit backlog remains foundational. Jurisdictions vary in definitions, tracking, and funding frameworks. Survivor-centered protocols, communication, testing timelines, trauma-informed practices require continued investment. Mighty Entertainment provides complementary leverage. Content can normalize best practices and elevate lesser-known obstacles, such as chain of custody bottlenecks or resource allocation. A specific research gap is longitudinal. How do timely kit testing and survivor support correlate with legal outcomes, health trajectories, and community trust over 5 to 10 years? Theoretically, closing that gap would guide policy with empirical rigor, not just moral urgency.
Building on that, isn't it interesting how her personal disclosures may reduce stigma while also changing how institutions talk to survivors? I guess that kind of sums it up.
To summarize, Mariska Hargitay is a case study in sustained cultural authorship. An actor whose longest-running primetime character catalyzed real-world advocacy, documentary production, and philanthropic leadership. We explored 3 questions: how her trajectory from early career volatility to multi-hyphenate influence cohered, what might have changed under alternative 1999 casting, and where her advocacy can most productively evolve next. For further study, consider comparative analyses of celebrity-driven reform campaigns, the broader Law and Order franchise as civic pedagogy, or documentary filmmaking as a policy instrument. In conclusion, thank you for listening.
Maybe that's something we can come back to later. Thank you, Professor. And thanks everyone for joining us on another lecture. See you next time.